It's Mammer Jammer.
Let's do it.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Metacast podcast. That's the podcast that improves itself, improves ourselves, and improves the self in general. My name is Ty. I'm going to be your host this evening, and as always, I'm joined by my charming co-host, Distance. And it sounded like you were cracking open a beverage. Yeah, what is that? Is that like a Bud, just normal, like a normal Budweiser?
It's ultralight beer.
It's
Bud
ultra
Select 55.
Jeez.
Ultralight sparkling water, honestly.
Yeah, basically the 55 is 55 calories, right? In the can,
Yep.
Is that what it's? Okay.
It's like 2.3% alcohol. Like, and I don't want to get drunk, so it's like I just want to taste beer that's decent and very drinkable. So it's an easy way to like drink, not get drunk, and also like not and take a whole lot of extra calories.
Is it decent though? Is it?
It's not bad. Like, okay, if it's the only thing you drink for like a day or two, it's actually not too bad. But the second you have
the second you compare it to any other beer,
yeah, literally anything. Like you take a sip of Milwaukee's Best, and it's like, God, this beer's terrible.
That's funny. Okay.
Well, actually, man, like since sorry, I didn't mean to make you laugh. I didn't think you'd laugh during the introduction. It was kind of funny that you did.
Well, it was just I didn't have you muted. It was just how loud the can cracking open was.
I wanted it to be heard, but I shouldn't have opened it right next to the microphone.
Okay, yeah.
Like the mic is like down here, and I had it like right next to it, like right at the corner here, and I was just like, I regret it now. I was gonna say though, before we actually get into the meat of this, since this podcast improves itself, I wanted to actually mention something that I think might be beneficial for us.
Sweet. Yes.
As a podcast. So it's a lot of it is because like I've actually done, believe it or not, I've done more research for this episode probably than any other episode we've done. And
okay.
I've got more notes than any episode that we've done.
Oh wow, good. Okay.
And I was sitting here thinking to myself that it might actually be beneficial for us to give better content or to be a little more like, I think polished or not polished, like, cause that's really not our style, but like knowledgeable about certain subjects. If we started doing this bi-weekly, like that we could spend more time on the subject and like really like jump into it. Not to say that like, cause a lot of the subjects we talk about are not ones that really require research because they're things that we have experience with.
Sure, yeah, but some require like just looking up definitions, looking up, just trying to prepare like a skeletal structure of where you want the conversation to go and things like that. Yeah,
but this one was very much like I wanted to get some history and understand some things and try to like get at least a reasonable idea of evolution of the idea, like where it came from. So I ended up like really like listening to a lot of stuff and reading a lot of stuff, and it's like because of the fact that I spent so much time on it this time, I feel like I'll be a higher quality co-host just because of the time I spent on it. So I mean, it's awesome. Obviously it's your call and we can talk about it offline, but I figured I'd like mention it to you just to sort of toss the idea around. That I think we'd maybe be able to offer like more knowledgeable content. Especially with some of the other subjects that we've got on the list, because a lot of those are ones that we're going to have to find some information and
exactly. There's a few that will like require like just me doing background research because I'm not very familiar with the subject at all.
And a big part of it is that I've been listening to Things You Should Know, and I was like, wow, they sound way smarter than us. I was like, this. I mean, they probably are smarter than us, but.
Well, I mean, just like you mentioned, though, with it being the style, like that is kind of their style is like, okay, here's something you should know. And it's coming from the point, I don't want to say like point of authority, but coming from the point of like, I know it, let me teach it to you. And a lot of our style is coming from like more of like, we're in this together, let's try to be better together. So it's like, I do it like it feels like it does fit our style. Like you said, it fits our style to a lot of times kind of do the do it live and not be like coming from that point, but I do understand for a lot of subjects, it would be more beneficial to prepare longer and kind of have a more put together content.
And we don't have to do it for every episode. I mean, there's some where it's more suitable than others. Like for this one, particularly the way that I kind of wanted to come at it, and I think the way that we talked about coming at it,
Mhm.
I felt like it required a good bit of homework.
I wonder what if we tried to structure, like, what if we still did weekly episodes, but we tried to structure every other episode to be one that required research, where we kind of have every other episode is more of just like a free form conversation about, like, it still, you know, of course, still follows our, like, I'm trying to think of subject of episodes we've had recently that are examples of that, like, that we didn't have to do much research for. But I feel like we could kind of like maybe organize our episodes into like those two categories of like requires prep and doesn't require prep. But
yeah, that could be cool. Yeah, I mean, and we can still keep it on like the same schedule, but just have a couple episodes in the hopper already that we know that we need to do some research on, just to kind of, you know, structure things. At least schedule, like personal scheduling and crap like that. So like we know exactly like what we need to do to prepare, or we know like what's coming up. So yeah, I mean that works, and you know, and we can. You know, we can talk some more about like scheduling and how exactly we want to do it offline, and we could do one of those like one of the really heavy ones, like even like once a month. It doesn't even have to be bi-weekly, but we could choose like one subject that we're both like so unbelievably like ignorant or unknowledgeable on, that we know a lot of other people are.
yeah,
That, like we feel like we could be beneficial to, you know, because I mean that's the point, is like, you know, to be a benefit to others. I mean, I like having conversations with you and they're always interesting, but you know, we record it for a reason.
Well, but I've had that same feeling though with multiple episodes where it's like I feel like I needed more time to prepare. It's like it's a subject matter that, like, I mean, especially like I think this is, you know, it's we've determined it's off brand now and it's not really what we do. But like when we did the galactic colonization episode, that's like I really enjoyed researching for that and learning about it. But it's like trying to learn enough to then have a 90-minute conversation about it in 1 week was like really tough.
I didn't research nearly enough, because like when we did that halfway through it, I was like, what the fuck am I even talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, that's really where I got. In fact, like right now, like I forgot some notes that I typed out in my phone that I needed to put in my notes that I just emailed to myself. So like I'm like demonstrating the maybe should have prepared better thing.
That is so fun. Where I was actually just transferring notes from my phone to my iPad. Yeah, we like during that. I like how we're both vamping while like making sure our notes are in the right. Perfect.
If you want proof, it's in the pudding.
You may say that that we do it live.
Hell yeah, that is what we do around here.
But yeah, so oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, how do you want to start? Do you want to like do definitions? You want to do history? Like
that's what I was gonna do. Yeah, I was gonna get to we are the subject matter tonight. So we've danced around it. We didn't really dance around it, but we've talked about a few other things, and we mentioned that there is going to be a subject tonight, and probably you either clicked this thumbnail or you saw the title down below. So it's probably not a secret. The subject and honestly, I didn't do this consciously at all. I don't know if subconsciously I was thinking about this, but we were discussing what episode to do this week, and I was looking through the list. We have a list of probably like 20 subjects that will be coming up. And one that had jumped out at me for a while was an episode on dating. I just think it's an interesting subject. I think it's a kind of different than a lot of the things we've been talking about the past few weeks. So I think it's like a fresh break. But I threw that one out there and I was like, hey, do you want to do the dating episode? And didn't even think that this week is Valentine's Day. So it's actually incredibly topical. It's a good week to do this subject. So like many of the others, like we were just talking about, like subjects, I feel like this is one that I don't know much about. I would say that I'm definitely like no dating expert. I mean, I've been on dates, but I'm not like, excuse me, I'm not someone that dates very often. So I mean, I definitely still have a lot to put in here. I've got a lot to say, but I do feel like this is similar to like some of the things we were just talking about, where I'm not coming to this from a point of much knowledge or much experience.
Yeah, so this one's actually one personally that I have quite a lot of experience with. So this is one that, like, I mean, the practice of doing so is something that I've learned over the years, but um, the sort of the history of it and like the fact, and I'm sure you found this out in your research, that this idea is like just a little less than a century old.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah.
Like our idea of dating right now. So like that's one interesting thing that I kind of learned about the history of it, and you know, looking at some of the things that we probably already knew about, like, you know, nuptials and marriage and like why people did that, but also like learning with more specificity some of the things that happen that sort of like cultural things or art that might have sort of pushed people in a more like romantic direction or whatever you want to call it. So to the tail end of the conversation, I think when we talk about like more recent ideas of it and like the practice of doing so, that's where I might sound like I maybe know what I'm talking about. But
Gotcha.
this beginning part, I'm expecting myself to sound really unintelligent, but that's okay.
Well, I mean, yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think that it is, you know, learning together, which the way that I consume content, I like that. I mean, of course, you know, I also like the TED Talk style where I'm going to learn from an expert, but I do think like mutual learning, I think is really cool too. What you started to talk about, like the history, the research that I was doing for this, the history made me think a lot of, recently I read and then watched Pride and Prejudice. Have you ever read that book or seen that movie?
No. Did you do that in preparations for this specifically?
No. Remember I told you like over the past like couple years I've been trying to like read or reread a lot of like classic literature. Like I read like Moby Dick and Great Expectations, and what else is on my shelf?
I remember this conversation now because I don't know if I said it out loud, but I was sitting there thinking to myself, like, yep, he's definitely way smarter than I am. It's like, or just way more driven. Like, I'm too fucking lazy to read any of that shit.
Well, I've always I've always appreciated writing, and like I feel like there's a lot of like I do the same thing with film. It's hard for me to appreciate old movies. When I watch like an old black and white movie, like I have to force myself to sit there and find something to enjoy, when versus like so many modern movies I can just kind of like zone out and enjoy it, right?
Yeah.
Like it's weird. Like I don't know, the media, when it becomes dated, my mind just is, I don't know. I'm so easily like entertained by the flashy, bright new stuff that a lot of the like dated like deeper stuff, I guess, is like it's harder for me to find the enjoyment. It's kind of pathetic. So that's why I was trying to like teach myself, I guess, to like enjoy some of what's considered the classics. So anyways, like while doing that, I read Pride and Prejudice, which is a Jane Austen, I think is Jane Austen book, that circles like a lot on young dating in, I think it would have been like the mid 1700s. And it's just so interesting how different everything was then. And it was like, even, and then especially like seeing the movie and the way that they choreographed scenes and like tried to like portray the body language of like what was super taboo at the time. It's just really like, it's interesting how quickly dating changes completely. It is like we live in a completely different world than it was, which I mean, of course, is like an understatement. We live in a different world in many other ways.
Yeah. So because I think I watched the movie, like my mom and my sisters like watched it, and I'm pretty sure one of my sisters had to read it for a class. I think that the reason why we watched it is because one of my sisters did, you know, the common thing where you read a book for class and they tell you to watch the movie and compare them.
Yeah.
So I think that's actually why we were watching it.
Gotcha.
Like, I was like 6 or 7, and I was just like, you know, can we watch Power Rangers instead? You know, like I wasn't really into it, but I vaguely remember some of it. So I'm just curious. So the dating that happens in that movie, like what like sort of socioeconomic class are the people in the book?
Well, the main character is, she's from like, I guess what you would consider like middle class at that time. Like they're definitely not poor, but they are not the like rich of the rich. And then the guy that she's interested in, the main love interest, is a very well off guy. And that's I think that's kind of like, I really liked the story, and I really identified with the main character, the guy, Mr. Darcy. He like, the entire book and movie, of course, the same story, but she like doesn't feel like he has any interest in her. And I think that the feeling that I got from the character, I don't know if it's me projecting and if this is like the reason why I identified with it, but it seemed like he was not the best at showing his emotions, and that he was like kind of like shy or whatever, and that was like that led to a lot of the like misunderstanding and the rockiness in their relationship, and why it like took so long for them to get together, basically.
Hold on, Mr. Darcy. That's the Colin Firth and the white shirt in the lake, and it's all wet that everybody goes crazy about in the movie.
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right. Is it weird that that's the thing that resounded with me?
Well, that's I think we learned something about a very young distance that watched this movie at 6 or 7, and apparently that scene awakened something in you. But
Colin Firth in the world's first wet T-shirt contest.
That's all you remember, though. It's all right. I mean, that's fair, though. That's fair. Dude, you couldn't have been 6. Hold on, you had to have been, because that movie came out in 2001.
Yeah, I don't.
Unless you watched the old 1940 version, but the one with Colin Firth came out in 2001. Yeah.
Really?
Oh, hold on. No. He played. Holy shit! Colin Firth played Mark Darcy in Bridget Jones' Diary, which is. Hold on.
Wait, you're talking about what?
Okay, okay, hold on. Colin Firth then played. No, hold on. Who played? Okay, it was 2005.
This is a different film.
Yes, Matthew McFadyen played Mr. Darcy. But in Bridget Jones' Diary, she had a character named Mark Darcy that was played by Colin Firth.
Oh.
And it says here that an adaptation of Bridget Jones' Diary Bridget Jones' Diary is a novel by Helen Fielding. I guess Fielding's novel is loosely based on Pride and Prejudice. It's almost like a modern, so like her Mark Darcy was the modern day the Mr. Darcy from Pride and Prejudice. But yeah, the movie came out in 2005 actually. So we were like 17 or 18.
Because like the picture I'm kind of talking, like it's actually a photograph that's all over the internet. So like it's one of those things, like, you know how you may not have a memory of something, but like somebody tells you that it happened, like when you were a kid. Like, and I'm just like, oh, that must have been in that movie. So like, I don't know, perhaps I've confused the hell out of myself.
Okay, no, yeah, this is from. Yeah, okay, but it is based off the same character. Here we go. Let me drag this over here. Oh, that's the wrong tab. I dragged the wrong tab. Here we go. Oh my God, that's the wrong one. There we go. There's a lot of people in white shirts and black jackets, but which one is which here? Is one of these Colin Firth?
Hold on, let me look at that. Yeah. Actually, there's a lot of them are Colin Firth.
Okay, and then the other one then is the actual like from Pride and Prejudice, which was supposed to take place like the period piece, basically the one we were actually talking about. But yeah, so yeah, it was a really interesting story. I really enjoyed reading it. I enjoyed watching the movie then afterwards. But yeah, what struck me the most was like the difference in just how people of the opposite sex were like allowed to interact with each other, like what was appropriate and what wasn't. Like it's really interesting the way the way cultural norms shift is fascinating.
Yeah, so I'm curious, was there at any point, because one thing I read about, and I think it was like as early as like the 1800s, there was this idea of a couple being allowed to spend intimate time together, but they had to be sewn into cloth sacks that they couldn't get out of.
In what culture? Was that like an American thing?
It's like a Western European thing.
That's interesting.
And also like an American thing. Like it wasn't that it was just a way that like you put them, they could spend the night together, but they were like sewn into cloth sacks so they couldn't like get out of them.
Who would
keep your naughty parts at bay?
Who would sew them in?
The parents.
That is very weird. But I guess, do you think that there is something we do now that is as weird, and 200 years people are going to be talking about it in the same way?
Drinking milk from other animals.
Well, that has nothing to do with dating. I mean, like a dating ritual. Drinking, but it is drinking weird from that is weird. I'll give you that one.
I don't know. I mean, I can't think of one right now, like existing in this culture that really strikes me as weird.
Well, all right, I got one for you. The garter belt at a wedding. Is that not a weird fucking tradition?
Like throwing it and then somebody. I mean, it's weird if your cousin catches it.
Well, isn't it weird? Like, hold on. I just mean the taking it off. Isn't it like, I've never been to a wedding as an adult, but from what I understand, the woman wears this band like very high up her leg, and it's like there's like a public thing where the guy is supposed to like reach up and take it off. So like in front of the entire family, you're kind of like, isn't it just kind of like an awkward thing? Like, it just seems like a really weird tradition that it's like
look away, Uncle Walter.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
so I was trying to come up with like the most boring like old white guy name, but a lot of the time, like when that's done, like the lady will be behind like a wall or like some kind of barrier or she'll turn around to where it's like not quite as risque.
Yeah,
but. And one thing that I want to address too is that just that the way that we're going to talk about this, just so the listeners understand, is like we're going to be somewhat heteronormative here because this is the type of dating that we're familiar with, and that doesn't mean that like in any way that we're trying to exclude any other like group or whatever from the conversation. This applies, I think, broadly to pretty much anyone. And the other thing is, it's like that dating rituals, if we're talking about history, a lot of like same-sex dating, if I'm sure it happened, none of that's recorded because it was stuff that, you know, people would have been like possibly like killed or arrested for.
Well, other than like ancient Greeks, like, there's definitely records of like same-sex relationships there, but like that kind of their relationships are so far removed from what we would consider dating that it's like, like the furthest we kind of went back to look for this, I think like you and I both were looking at basically like 1700s, 1800s stuff, and not really. Yeah,
that's most of kind of what I was looking at. And so I think that one thing that we need to talk about, like, is like, you know, political marriages and things like that, like Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, which I think ended in shambles. It's actually really funny because I looked at a bunch of marriages between like ruling families, and all of them were disasters. Like Isabella and Ferdinand, Spanish Inquisition. I forget the rulers' names, but the man that built the Taj Mahal, because of his wife's untimely death, is like a dedication.
Yep.
Being half Indian, I should know their names, but I can't remember them. And you know, just the idea that even outside of like monarchies and stuff, that it was for financial gain, it was for political gain, it was to unite lands, it was to end familial rivalries. And you really wanted to marry within your like socioeconomic standing, and that's the reason why I asked you the question about the characters in Pride and Prejudice was, you know, where are they like in this hierarchy, and like did they really date much outside of it? In a lot of cases, it's like you would see this thing, because I was talking to someone at work today, because I talked to a few people about this to try to gather some sort of information, like anecdotal kind of like remarks and experiences and things that people had. And the guy I work with today mentioned something about how he thought it was unfortunate that he didn't use these exact words, but what he was getting at was the idea that we don't live in a type of civilization anymore where women are essentially forced to be dependent upon men.
He thought that was unfortunate, or
wait, what?
He thought that was unfortunate?
Yeah, he thought that was unfortunate. He's also like 59.
Okay, yeah.
Because the idea, and I tried to kind of clarify with him, and I think that his idea is that because like the family sort of nucleus is like it's kind of a major part of like societal stability, at least historically, for the West at least, that he thought that it was unfortunate that there wasn't any incentive for either biological sex, like as far as heterosexual relationships go, to depend on the other. And for me, I said to him, like, well, no, I think that forces, it makes it a bigger challenge because you have to prove to be higher value to each other.
Well, I think, I mean, no matter what, it's like humans, we're social creatures. We need that like sense of belonging and interaction no matter what. Like I feel like you don't need to rely on someone for some sort of specific role, or like you need other people to fill those roles in your life no matter what, I think.
Yeah, I mean, to some degree, like it's some of those roles, and I mean, I think that his whole idea was that like he thought that it was unfortunate that there was no like thing to like push people into getting married.
Yeah.
Which I was kind of like, because it's like if you're like you're female, you can't own property, you can't vote, you can't. I think in the ancient Greece, like if your husband died, you got none of that stuff if you were a widow.
Oh, wow. Yeah, like everything was
maybe
passed
that's
down.
Rome.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
And like so it's like one of these things where like it almost like forced women to be put into that situation, like where they pretty much had to, like, you marrying off your daughter or whatever. And I'm sure that's probably a lot of like what they brush on, like subject matter in Pride and Prejudice. Am I correct? Or
I mean, somewhat. Yeah. I mean, it's more like, it's really more of a love story. I mean, it's really more just about like the feelings and the emotions that are going on between well, I mean, you're experiencing it from, I think her name was Elizabeth, was the main character, but it's more from like her eyes. You're like, but yeah, I mean, that is definitely mentioned, and that is one of the reasons why their relationship was rocky and everything to get off in the beginning, was the difference in socioeconomic status, like you were talking about.
So this is actually, and do you have a like a roundabout idea when that was published?
Let me look that up real quick. Pride and Prejudice, 1813.
Okay, that's so. And the reason why I'm interested is because there is a book that I discovered called Julie, by a writer named Jean-Jacques Rousseau.
Okay.
And it was 1761, and in the book, it's about a young woman named Julie who is like, she's expected to marry like within the socioeconomic hierarchy, and she falls in love with her teacher.
Okay.
Ooh, scandal. That'd be scandal now. Her teacher, who she can't marry because of his like class rank in society.
Yeah.
So the narrator that narrates the book is actually on the side of the lovers, but there's like no solution though. Like, she's in love with this guy, but she just does what she's supposed to do.
Gotcha.
Out of like her societal duty, and then she marries someone in her social class while she's still sort of in love with this other person. And I think that this writer, I think they call him a realist, but I would call the guy a romantic, honestly. Then there's another book I can't remember who wrote it. I had it written down. It came out in 1894.
Okay.
And it's called I Vicere. It's Italian. I probably butchered that, but it's a really complicated book, and there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a bunch of like plot lines, but it's something similar. It's Lucrezia and Benedetto are two characters that fall in love, and they can't marry. And the mom won't allow it because of like the social standards. But here's the interesting thing: the mother is portrayed as being like old-fashioned and like a stick in the mud. But
so it's like to that previous generation of the time period of the book you were just speaking of. Yeah,
and it's like wanting people to kind of change and like wanting to push towards something else. And it kind of highlights the idea that couples who start from reason and like mutual gain, that they're shown to be like less happy by the writer. Like they're actually portrayed as such by the writer.
Yeah.
And the idea that relationships founded on like feelings, or like physical and emotional attraction, you're bound to be happier.
I mean, I get there's definitely something to that as far as like when you're talking about, I mean, because love is an emotion, right? So if you're talking about
well, I mean, not really.
Love,
I mean, the way that we talk about it, it's we think of it that way. But if you look at like I think the best definitions were the Greek ones.
Okay.
Like I think it's philos, eros, agape, and there's another one.
Yeah, the different
But the word love isn't even used. Like we call those types of love, but to the Greeks, those were different words.
Yes. Yeah.
And
which
so
I think is more accurate. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that we think of love as a feeling, and maybe it is, but see, that's the thing though, is like I very much disagree with that now.
Yeah, I don't know.
I know.
Well, I mean, it's definitely like we can characterize it as a feeling, but it's like it's the same with there's plenty of negative emotions that it's like you think you're feeling something, and if you really boil it down, you're feeling fear. Like that. I think that love is kind of the same thing, where it may be an illusory emotion that we say that it's like, oh, I'm feeling love, but it's like, well, no, let's actually boil that down. It's like, really, what are you feeling? There's something deeper that's a little different.
And And I think that's kind of the point that I think I'm sort of getting at with the whole love thing. And I think we're probably on the same. I think we're getting to the same place, like independently, but together, independently. I don't know. Forget I said that. And so it's the idea that there is this this like fierce passion that's like, associated with this feeling. And the thing that I found is that in romantic relationships, the further away I get from that, the more content I am.
Like once you're talking about like the that would kind of be characterized as like the honeymoon phase wearing off, right?
Yeah, or like, I want to well, I mean, like, as even like not even allowing the honeymoon phase to occur.
Okay.
Like being cognizant of it and like kind of stopping it before it begins, and like recognizing that like you need to be rational about this.
Yeah.
Which is difficult. I mean, but okay, so to be completely fair, like, and full disclosure, obviously sexual attraction occurs, and I can't do anything about that.
Yeah.
You're going to be physically attracted to your partner, and that's just something that that happens. But it's allowing an unhealthy thing to begin. And so that's kind of like the question that I wanted to ask you, was that because when you look at someone marrying an individual for their achievements or their lifestyle or their credentials or prestige or money, regardless of that person's sex, we tend to think of that as being like a bad thing, and that you should be attracted to or be with someone for like a deeper kind of reason, a passionate kind of love as a feeling, like defined as a feeling. So do you think that it was, which way do you think is better? Like marrying because your parents said to and they feel that it's the best and it'll be the best for your like lifestyle and like economic status? Or do you think it's more like the feeling, emotion, instinct, or maybe a little bit of both?
For me personally, my opinion, I don't care either way. I don't there's nothing sacred about the idea of marriage to me. So it's not something that I feel like it needs to be protected, or that like people getting married for a different reason would like cheapen the people that marry for love or anything like that. So it's like I don't see a almost like arranged marriage or a business type marriage. Like I don't see that as being a negative thing in any way. I know that there's a lot of people that do, but I feel like that it may just be my mind the way I see things, but I feel like that attachment a lot of times comes from the religious side. It is like you feel like there is a sanctity to marriage, and it's like when people do it for a reason that you don't 100% agree with, that cheapens marriage. And like that's what I've seen kind of the most, and I don't agree with that at all. Like if people get married for green cards, like honestly, like I don't give a fuck. Like I know it's illegal, like but that doesn't, to me, that I don't find that offensive or anything. Or even like did you ever watch any of oh fuck, god damn it, what's the name of that show? House of Cards. Yeah, I like their marriage between Claire and Frank. They definitely did not marry for love. Like that was
But that's the cool thing, is their marriage seemed very beneficial.
Yes.
And like seemed like really good for both of them, like in a way that was like
exactly. And I would say that who's the victim, right? Like other than the one person that may look at that
sanctity of marriage,
exactly,
is the victim.
Like the one person that looks at it from the outside and says like, oh, I don't agree with that, they should marry on based on love. But like that's not me though.
So like outside of like matrimony, like outside of actually getting married, just like being in a relationship or calling someone your significant other or your partner, do you think that there's like a set of motivations or reasons for that maybe aren't the best, like outside of the actual label of like marriage or calling someone your spouse?
Well, when you're talking about not the best, the only thing that I would say the only time that I would say something is like quote unquote not the best or not objectively like good, I get, or something that's objectively bad, is when someone is being taken advantage of. if someone is in a relationship and like one person thinks they're exclusive and the other person isn't, the situations like that are like I completely disagree with, of course, because one person is being lied to and is losing. But it's like in a relationship where if it's an open relationship, both people are fine with the other partner having other partners, like that doesn't bother me. It's not, it's like each person does their own thing like that, like but yeah, like I don't know, the only time I see that kind of like projecting like, oh, I disagree with that so you can't do it either, it seems to come from like a almost religious side to me.
Because for me, like, I don't necessarily think of it as coming from a religious side. I mean, some of that stuff does, but a lot of it to me comes from like naivety.
Possibly, yeah.
Like,
yeah.
it's just people like being fed this fucking like Hugh Grant and Julia Roberts fall madly in love thing, or like the sparkly vampire is beautiful, or is it the werewolf? You know, like all that crap. Like, I mean, I actually find it appalling, honestly. Like, because I think that it gives people an idea of romantic relationships that will get them hurt.
I would, yeah, I'll agree.
I think that increases the likelihood of emotional pain.
I do think though that if you go back far enough, it's like, I think the reason why the Hugh Grant idea of love exists is the church to begin with. I think like really like it may just be me in my like kind of like the way I see the world, but it's like I do feel like a lot of that was pushed by like a puritanical idea, that it's like, I mean, it is like the religion idea to like, we want to make more of our religion, so like let's get people to.
Well, but I mean, you don't need to get people to fuck.
Well, no, but
I mean, they're like, it's gonna happen. So,
no, but more like the getting people to pair into like family units, and like the marriage and like that kind of that thing.
Even if you look at like the idea of marriage from a like a religious perspective, like if you look at how it's talked about in numerous types of religious scripture, the reasons are pretty damn practical.
True. Yeah, true. Yeah, that is very true. And that is, I mean, really, when we're talking about dating, like all that is like the beta testing for marriage, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we can get to that later. Because that I actually, and just for a spoiler here, like, did you look at game theory at all involving this?
I not specifically know, but I mean, I've looked at game theory in the past, and I can. That's an interesting idea. I like that.
That's something that I want to brush on. So the idea of like dating as a beta test for marriage, like, and I want to come back to that more toward the end.
Okay.
That's something that I want to touch on, because I looked at game theory, and actually I actually listened to someone speak specifically about game theory as it relates to dating.
Interesting.
And it was actually kind of cool, like what they had to say.
Yeah, that is interesting. I'm excited to hear about that. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, sorry for sidetracking us there then. But.
Oh yeah, but I mean, but that's like, I think that this is a spot where like I think our perspectives might diverge a little bit, because I think, at least for me, that I think I would disagree that the romanticism of it, or like that like comes from religion. I think that having a duty to do so almost feels like a religious thing, but I wouldn't say that the warm fuzzy butterfly thing really comes from that. I think that's more of like a media, like kind of like hokey like movie thing.
Well, yeah. I guess I'm meaning just more like the roots of it before there was a media, like why that's even an idea that's spread like a media, like the real like kernels of it. Because like when I picture like humans, thousands of years ago, I don't picture like hunter-gatherer societies caring about the idea of romanticism. I feel like that is like a modern thing that has developed. I feel like, so like I don't know, do we have like, that's something that I didn't find through any of this. Is there any evidence to support like monogamy in far human history, or is that like a more recent thing?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't look particularly hard, but I have a feeling that if I did actually try to seek out that information, that I probably wouldn't be able to find much. I don't think that in anything that I've like listened to or found any interest in the past, that I've ever seen any evidence of it. But there's no evidence to the contrary.
Yeah,
but there definitely isn't any evidence for. So at least that, I mean, I don't know that anything that, I don't even know how we would
Yeah,
how
what
it
kind of
would even
evidence could
determine,
survive that long anyways? Yeah. It's
But
not
you
like
know, the thing that like, then okay, I swear I'm getting back to the subject, but I believe it is leopards. Leopards are solitary cats, as pretty much all cats are, except for lions and domestic cats. So the only ones that are actually community animals. So when leopards, I'm pretty sure it's leopards, or jaguars, one of them spotted cats, like a male and a female,
or panthers,
during
right? Aren't they actually
during
the same thing?
the mating season. I think maybe, I can't remember. I think they're the same genus. Maybe, I can't remember. But they like get together, and like the male and the female, and they like have sex like
Nice.
every couple hours for like days.
That's hot.
And so, and I'm using this like sort of analogy because like when you look at that like sort of like hot and heavy like honeymoon period of like a relationship where people are like they're being intimate, having sex all the time, doing like out there sort of kinky stuff, or doing things that are more adventurous for the first year or so that they're together. Like I relate that very much to the leopards getting together and doing it for days.
Yeah,
because it's like it's essentially like, I don't know if this is an accepted term, but I call it like reproductive urgency.
Yeah, I think it's just like it's an animalistic thing. Yeah, it's the. Did you ever hear? I know he's like shunned now because of some of the. Like, did you ever hear Louis C.K.'s bit where he talked about like biological trickery with horniness and stuff like that?
No.
It was really funny because he's talking about like a teenage boy seeing like boobs, and it's like consciously to him it's just like I like boobs, I like those, but it's like it's really a biological trick that your body is like, those could feed a kid, I want to have a baby. And it's like that's really, I mean, the kid like the teenage boy doesn't consciously want to have a baby, but that is what his body is doing. It's like, we want to procreate. Like it is a biological trick. Yeah,
because of the estrogen that is stimulating the adipose tissue in the chest region, that person is reproductively mature. Like they are able to reproduce. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, I mean, I agree with that to some degree. Yeah. I mean, actually, I completely agree with that. And, I understand that the dude did some dumb shit, but like, even the most deplorable person ever, sometimes things that are interesting or poignant is the word, or clever, can come out of their mouth. So just because somebody screws up and does something dumb doesn't mean that they never did anything good, because humans are far too complex for that. But I just want to kind of touch on that since you mentioned the guy. But
and I think we're both people that we can separate someone's person from the work. And it's like, we can look at the person's work without really needing to care too much about the personality, really. But
and it's like, take the things that are, judge things or assess behaviors independently of each other,
Yes.
So that's kind of a thing, like where, like the idea that I think that Homo sapiens sapiens, that our heads are quite large, and that the females essentially gave up the ability to like run particularly well and to swim effectively, to be able to give birth like with a larger birth canal with a decreased likelihood of crushing the child's skull and also dying in childbirth. And that's a reason why like people when you say someone has nice hips, it means that person has childbearing hips. Like, and the term's even used. So it's the same thing. I mean, all the things that we think of as being like sexy or whatever, like in a partner, regardless of what it is that we're attracted to, a lot of it has to do with those things.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, I totally agree, like with your point, like the comedic approach that Louis C.K. made to doing that. So there's another thing that I kind of wanted to like touch on a little bit as far as like history goes, like the idea of how our definition of dating kind of came to be.
Well, yeah, because I was gonna kind of talk about that when we started talking about like the early stuff, because for so long it was just an arranged marriage, right? Like the two people were but like you wouldn't consider them dating, right? It was just, you knew that these two children were going to be married at a certain age, but it's like they were not they were not dating. They never courted each other or like
Right.
yeah.
It was like preparatory visits, and like even the courting itself was more like negotiations between the families.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because like but I think that I'm fairly certain that there wasn't like a flat rate for dowries. Like a dowry was negotiated.
I don't know. Yeah, I actually don't know.
They're like, all right, I'm gonna give you 3 sheep, and you can have a whole fucking second farm. How about that for your rich ass son?
Keeping your main but giving up your second.
Yeah. Your second, your summer farm.
Yeah. But yeah, so like, I mean, what we call modern dating is really like, I mean, what is the difference between dating and friendship? Is it really just when sexual activities are started to brought in? Like,
see, that's another thing that I think is a detriment about modern dating. Like complicated terms. I have a whole list of them I wrote down. Talking, seeing each other, dating, casually dating, friends with benefits, exclusive, hooking up, fuck buddy, etc.
Yeah. Which
Facebook official, like
it's complicated, right?
It's complicated as an actual like that's
like an official status on Facebook. I think it's like you can have your religious.
That's the thing is that like I think that the problem is that like that definition is wishy-washy as hell. Like there really isn't like we could talk about it. We could talk about it for probably hours and never like figure out the truth.
Well, I mean, just like we were talking about with the relationships can be different things to different people. Like there can be people in a strictly monogamous relationship. There can be people in open relationships. So it's like if you just call both of those dating, that's a wide definition that can mean very different. It's the same thing as using the word love, like we were talking about. I think it makes a lot more sense for the Greeks to have 4 different versions of love that we kind of lumped into one word. It's so weird because it's like, that's why it sounds strange to tell your friend you love them, because it's the same word you use for your spouse. We use the same word for very different feelings. Yeah.
I love saying I love you without dude, man, or bro at the end of it to a friend, and it's like, whoa. I'm like, bro, it's no big deal. I love you.
It is better if you put it at the beginning.
Yeah, dude, man, I love you. Dude, I love you.
Yeah,
it's actually fun. I'm gonna message somebody soon. So I think that like so I feel like we need to talk about sex too.
I mean, because like we just said, that is basically the difference between, like, I mean, well, okay, so like you brought up, there are a bunch of different like versions of dating. Yeah. If you're talking to someone, if you're like in a serious relationship, that's all dating. But really, I mean, the difference, if you're just hanging out with someone and you're getting to know them, you don't consider it dating until there's like some sort of sexual activity, basically, right?
Yeah, but even then, like, it could be hooking up or a friend with benefits.
Well, but does that, I guess friend with benefits definitely doesn't fall under the definition of dating, but like a lot of the other ones do, though. I would say that it's like a wide net.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that the closest thing that I think I could get to, at least reasonably, would be that you call it dating when you have made a mutual decision to refer to that situation as that. Like when both parties have agreed, this is what we shall call ourselves.
So it's like the nuclear keys. Like both people have to like turn the key at the same time and say like, all right, we are now dating. Like,
yeah, and I think that it's like, and it's really sad sometimes when it's like, hey, this is my my girlfriend Heather. And like later on, Heather's like, when did we discuss that?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I'm sorry, Heather. Like, I thought we were dating. Are we not?
Well, yeah. Like,
don't look at me, Heather. Don't look at me.
I was about to say I had a friend that, like, I was about to tell a story and liken it to a friend, and then I just realized it was the dude from Horse Girl. But he was talking about his ex that like always introduced him as as her friend. Like never once did she like introduce him as the boyfriend. She was like, oh yeah, this is my friend Darren. Like, yeah, I've known relationships like that where it's like they're obviously exclusive. They've been dating for effectively like 2 years, but they don't want to put a label on it, and they don't introduce each other as that. Like, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, and some people don't want a label, and that's fine. I mean,
Yeah,
like it's like you were saying before, like it's an individual thing. Like you're not gonna point at someone else's decision and call it unacceptable.
no,
It's just whatever works for you in your situation, as long as both parties are content and no one's being taken advantage of. And I mean,
exactly,
I
yeah.
think I agree with you there too. So,
And if anything,
um,
the idea, like the interest in just exploring like what the definition is and why it matters is like the reason why any word matters in a language is you want to be able, like we have language so we can agree on definitions. So when I use a word, you know what I'm meaning. Like
right.
that's the whole point. So it's like to explore and figure out like, okay, well, what does dating mean to different people? It's not making a judgment. It's just trying to say like, okay, well, let's learn. Like,
Yeah, and it's actually kind of a cool way to think about it. I dig that actually. A very good way to put it too.
thanks, man.
So I guess it's funny because some of this, like, I feel like to mention one thing, I have to mention another. So
Mm-hmm.
like the idea of technology and how that affects dating. I believe in the 1920s, I guess, like when the whole like flapper kind of lifestyle became a
Mm-hmm.
thing, the roaring 20s, and everybody wanted to have a good time and like wear outlandish outfits and party and drink quite a lot. The automobile was actually I can't remember. I heard someone talk about it, that it was an article written by a popular publication that called the automobile like the the
Oh,
brothel with wheels or something like
that's
that,
funny.
or like the mobile whorehouse or something, and that they thought that contributed to that sort of like, you know, raging fun lifestyle. But you know, I think that when you start to see like dating like in the 1950s, the idea of like being pinned
Yeah.
or like going steady,
Yeah.
that you would get the guy's varsity pin, and like you'd wear it, and that would be like your symbol of being like going steady kind of thing.
Well, I
That
was really quickly. I do want to ask a quick question. Is there a difference between dating and then like a steady relationship like that? Is that still dating, or is dating the phase before that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, I think dating is like the idea of going places and doing things and like
True.
enjoying
Yeah.
yourself with someone else's company.
Yeah. Because
And you
even
can
when
say,
you're
I
married,
am,
you still call it date night.
yeah, like you're going on a date. And
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, the whole idea of like d- dating means like, or casually dating or seriously dating. I mean, there's, like I said, the definitions are confusing as fuck, and
Yeah.
it's like it's very complicated and it can be very difficult. And I think that there's like, say what you want to about freedom, and I agree that freedom is quite nice, but you have to learn how to be free. And it's hard to deal with that sometimes. It's hard to take
Yeah.
the responsibility of having to figure things out on your own, and it's puzzling and hard. I mean, and it's, people get very confused about having those conversations.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, it's like you look at but here's I think here's a big revolution, a huge turning point. That one thing I think that a lot of people don't recognize from both sides of the ideology are that there is a period of time where sex was extremely dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
That you would end up, you know, it could end up in, you know, childbirth that you maybe weren't in a position to be able to support, or you know, that you, the idea of, I think, the idea of like monogamy, I think, gives you an insurance policy that you will not be, you know, raising this child on your own. I think that's
Yes.
because I think of it as a contract, like an agreement
It,
between
yeah.
two people,
Exactly.
that no matter how bad shit gets, like I'll be right here.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, you know, like we make a proper decision, we think about this rationally, make sure we're compatible, and then we take this very seriously, and we're certain that, you know, this is a contract that we will honor. And you know, sexually transmitted diseases very recently were a problem, but a big turning point was in like, I think it was actually 1960, that the first like birth control like pill, like
Yep.
actual oral birth control medication, was approved by the FDA in the United States.
That's what I was just going to
So
bring up when you were talking about
yeah.
technology. Like my mind immediately went to, you know, like how we date online now. But then like
Oh,
also,
yeah.
yeah, no, the biggest technology change was the sexual revolution, like you're talking about. Like that was,
Yeah.
that was major.
Because it dramatically decreased the consequences for sex.
Yeah.
That you could actually do it as a leisure activity, and like,
Yep.
you know, regardless of like sex between people that are straight is essentially saying like, I am okay with using your genes with my genes to create a human. You know, that's what that we forget that that's what it's for.
Well,
And like that's not
yeah,
like a religious thing at all.
but not
Like
anymore. Like at this point, like you're saying, like technology has changed where you're no
but
longer
like
saying that.
well, no, like it's still the when we were having sex, it doesn't
Mhm.
lead to that. But the
Yeah.
reason why we have the instinctive desire to do so,
Yes, you know, I
is
get what you're
specifically
saying.
because of it.
Yes,
But
yes.
now we can have sex as a leisure activity, which is pretty fucking cool. But
Mhm.
I think like in even like as recently as like the 1800s, it was thought of as like weird to have like sexual relations with your spouse after you'd had like all the children you were going to have.
Oh, so it really was like just like all
Like
right,
thought of as
it's
being like, why would you
reserved
do that?
for
Like it's yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But then the idea of like having sex outside of that could result in some pretty bad catastrophes, like resulting in like women forced to like raise children on their own in a society where they're considered second class citizens, and the societal things are kind of fucked up and wrong. But even without that, you know, it could be a problem. So. But the other thing is like now everybody is like, you know, banging it up like jackrabbits. But there was like an AIDS epidemic in like the 1980s,
Yeah.
like as recent as that.
Yeah.
And then, you know, awareness started to rise, and, you know, people start wearing, you know, condoms and other types of apparatuses to not just prevent childbirth, but also prevent the spread of sexually transmitted diseases.
Yeah, learning about
And
that was big.
Yeah, and I think that there's sort of a lack of thought from both individuals that would say sex bad versus sex good versus sex okay. Is that I think that people forget that there was a time when it was dangerous.
Yes.
And they also fail to acknowledge that this is a time where it's immensely less dangerous as long as you participate in it like in a sensible fashion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like there's like I wouldn't dream of having sex with somebody like and not wrapping it up. Like especially like the first time you meet someone, like that's crazy. Reckless. In fact, I have a friend of ours who can remain nameless who does that on a regular basis. And I was like, you know what, dude? If you're gonna start wearing a fucking condom, I'm just gonna wear no helmet or jacket and flip flops on the motorcycle all the time.
Jesus, don't do that.
And I mean, I'm not. It's not legal here anyway. But it was a joke. But also like, and I sent him a bunch of pictures like from health class of like warts and blisters. And I was like, and the worst one, and I sent him a picture of a baby.
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, it is, you know, but I think
that one's terminal.
That
one is definitely terminal.
Sexual revolution, like women's lib, like things like that, really contributed to the idea of like you dating like the bachelor pad, like a man living on his own and not being thought of as a loser. Like that was I guess the 1960s, 1970s, somewhere in there.
Okay.
And this is all really recent stuff.
Yeah, very. Yeah.
But since we're talking like, because I kind of want to go like through like a timeline of stuff that I kind of looked at, and this is like heavily summarizing things, right? But on the technology subject, like I was actually talking to someone at work today. She is 55 or 56.
Okay.
And she was
and
like,
is she married or dating?
She was married for 15 years, but she's now dating a male who she calls her partner, and they've been together for 19 years and they live together.
Okay.
She doesn't want to like sign the contract or whatever, which is fine. I mean, that's her decision.
Yeah.
And cool, you know, whatever. I support her in it if it makes her happy.
But they're super serious though. They've been together for quite a while.
Yeah. I mean, they're pretty much not going anywhere. It's pretty much agreed upon. But
do you know did they have kids together or her?
No. She has I believe she has a daughter or maybe two with her husband. She was married to for 15 years, but the two of them do not have any children.
Okay.
At least not that I know of. But it was the use of the term nowadays that was used quite often in the conversation. And she was like, you know, it's just so materialistic. I'm like, wait, what? Like because I was asking her questions about dating because I told her we're going to talk about this. I'd like to gather some information. And I was like, materialistic? And like I kind of raised an eyebrow, and she's like, you know, just like, if people are like hot or not. I was like, well, that's not materialistic.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with material, but
I think she meant superficial. But she's like, you know, we'll swipe left and swipe right and swipe left. Like, oh, they're not hot. And I was like, so I was like, because I wasn't completely familiar with her situation. I was like, how long have you been married? She's like, I'm not married. I have a partner.
Okay.
So we talked about the history that I just went over. I said, so when you met him, like, did you look at him and think he's kind of ugly, but let's see where this goes?
Yeah, exactly. Like,
she's like, well, no. So I didn't think he was super hot. I was like, did you think he was cute?
Yeah. Did you find him physically attractive?
And then I was like, if you didn't think he was cute, would you have still dated him? And then she was like, and then she was like, and then she answers the phone and she's talking, and I'm heading out the door, and I'm like, the answer is no. I rest my case and I walk out the door.
Well, there are a lot of people that make the argument that once you learn someone's personality, that can make them more physically attractive to you. I've definitely experienced that. Like you can meet someone and your initial attraction level is not that high. Then you get to know the person and you know who they are, and you're actually more physically attracted to them because of their personality. Yeah. I can see that making that argument, and then possibly in the past you would get to that opportunity more often than just like, oh, I don't like their face, swipe left.
Yeah, that's true. But there is an initial interest. Like there is a marginal degree of physical attraction to begin with. And that can grow, but you're not going to look at someone and be like, that person looked like a horse, just kicked them directly in the face and then pissed on them. And then
it has to be exactly. It has to be a non-zero amount. But I would say like in the past, you could have like, a slight attraction to someone, and then you get to know their personality by like hanging out with them in person. And then all of a sudden that turns into something where nowadays, like you would say, it's like you have that, you see their picture and it's such a slight attraction that you swipe left and you never actually explore what could have been a really great chemistry. You know what I mean? Like, of course I'm like, dreaming up a situation, but.
And there's a place I kind of want to go, like on the subject of the online dating thing. But I follow you, and it makes sense because there is no opportunity.
Yeah, I'm trying to defend her.
Superficial. There's no interaction.
Exactly. Like I'm kind of playing devil's advocate because I'm not like against the idea at all, but I'm trying to like defend why I think that mentality exists.
And I have a thought that I had that I wanted to brush on that actually kind of goes with the point that you're making. So, but I'm gonna need to be right back. Because I'm just like, I can't even focus right now. Usually I'm like, I'm just going to hold it the whole fucking podcast. But you know what? We do it live. I'll be back.
Oh my God.
Vamp.
Oh my God.
Go.
The worst part about this is like no part of me physically recognized that I had to pee until Distance started mentioning that he has to pee. And now I am in an incredibly physically uncomfortable situation. But more on topic of what we're actually talking about. Less about my uncomfortability. It is weird how much technology has changed the dating landscape, and of course, I mean, technology changes everything, right? It changes how we communicate with each other in every facet of our lives. So of course, it's going to change every type of relationship. But like, it is very, very strange how fast things change. And like, even like what I was going to point out, I don't think Distance said the name of the person he was talking about, but the person that he talked to, that they were making a judgment about how superficial dating is now and things. But they like, how do they even know? They've apparently been out of the dating pool for 19 years. They've been with their most recent partner for, I mean, that would mean that when they were dating, it was 2000 or 2001. That was a completely different world than it is now. The dating world has changed in those 20 years immensely. Hey, welcome back.
Man, that was brutal. I'll tell you what, this light beer.
Did you just call your piss brutal? That is not a word you want to use for like a bathroom experience ever.
Yeah, so I don't know what all you were talking about whilst vamping, but yeah, sorry about that, dude. I just it was one of those points where I was like, I can't even focus right now. It just went right through me.
You're fine. So, but no, the main thing that I said though, that I kind of wanted your opinion on this was I don't think you said the name of the person you were talking about that you spoke to at work, but they had they were making like a judgment on modern dating and that it being like superficial. But my retaliation to that is like, how did they know? You mentioned that they had been in a relationship for 19 years. The last time they were dating, it was a completely different dating world than it is now.
Yeah, it was. And that's actually a point that I made in the conversation, that I said like, okay, so 20 years ago when you met your partner, like I just said like dating sucked just as bad then, you just don't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you also don't really understand. You just like are looking at some individuals and sort of judging a large group as that, but in reality, like it's just another medium to be used, and it gets blamed for like hookup culture or whatever you want to call it. But and the media gets blamed for it, but I don't really know that it is necessarily to blame. Like
I don't think it's to blame, but it is definitely, if someone wants to do that, it is going to make it easier. And I think
Yeah,
that's kind of like,
Well,
yeah, I mean, it's like
it also,
the cell phone. Do you blame the cell phone for drug sales? It's like if people are gonna buy drugs, like yeah, they're gonna call their dealer
That's
with a
true.
cell phone. You don't blame the tool though. It's just kind of like
Yeah.
it's gonna make people. It's gonna make it easier for them to do that.
True. Or it's like infidelity too. Like you could blame it for that, but not,
Hmm.
I mean, and even then, like honestly, like I would say it's hooking up is easier without the devices. It's easier
Mm.
to like meet each other and gauge each other's attraction and stuff like that, and like determine intentions and things like when you're together,
Just like
in
at a
one
bar
place.
versus like
Yeah, or like yeah, it's like, and that's the other thing is like, oh, I'm not gonna get off of Tinder. I'm gonna go to a respectable place to meet a partner, like a bar
yeah,
or a
exactly.
nightclub. I'm like, okay, brilliant. That works so much better. I mean, not to
Well,
say that bars and nightclubs aren't fun. They certainly are fun.
no, but there
Um,
is something to be said. Like it's not that the establishment is respectable. I think that it's the idea of face-to-face interaction versus the digital interaction, which I understand that. I mean, me, of course, like, you know me, most of my line or most of my life is digital interaction. Like I live in Azeroth. I like most of my friends are literally people I've never met before that I only know them as either like a gnome mage or a human warlock, and I've heard their voice. Like, so digital interaction to me is not I don't value it lower than person to person interaction. I do recognize that humanity needs face to face interaction, and I'd like, but I don't like. I don't fall in line where a lot of people do, where they think that it's like just complete bullshit and that you can't make real friendships online or things like that. But
yeah, I for the most part I agree with you because I've got like I have one particular friend who I met on the internet, and he and I like have like inside jokes and stuff, and I actually haven't played with him in forever. I met him playing Rainbow Six.
oh, okay.
But it's a really cool like friendship, and we have fun and we talk, and like I know his hobbies and what he's into, and like I know his grandmother's name and like his what his parents do for a living, things like that. So I totally agree that like I'm not necessarily in the school of thought that like interaction like electronically is completely cheap all around, but I will say it is much more fulfilling to hang out with someone that you're attracted to in person,
Oh, definitely. Yes.
like the chemical side of things, and like
Yeah.
the interaction and the flirting and like the glances and things, and casually touching one another like on the things like that. That's very nice. It's very fulfilling, and it feels quite good.
That kind of like exploratory phase where you're like you're still you're new to each other. You don't know like yeah.
And for that, I can understand why people like point specifically at the online dating thing. But the point that I kind of wanted to make was, you go to restaurants, right?
Of course, yeah. I mean, not
Let's
very
say-
often, but yeah.
Yeah. So like, let's say you and I go to a restaurant. There's probably steak there because I almost feel like you refuse to go someplace where there isn't steak.
If we were to go to a restaurant, yeah, they would serve steak, yeah.
So so we get there and there's a menu, right? There's a server, and we decide it's drink this, drink that, grab Coca-Cola, beer, whatever. This steak with this side, blah 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 blah. And there's a choice that we need to make. But
is this together or separate? Is that the choice?
We always get asked that. It's like every time we go out.
Yeah, we do.
But
no, I love our answer every time. It's like the check is separate, but we're together.
Yeah. I mean, we are definitely a couple, but the check is separate. We're going Dutch. So I'm relating this in a way to Uber Eats or Grubhub.
Okay.
Or it's like going to the video store or going to a Redbox. You pick a disc, you go home, you watch. You go to a movie theater, you pick film, you watch. Netflix, you fucking scroll through and you can't figure out, you want to watch this, you want to watch that. You watch 5 minutes of this. There's all these choices. Grubhub, Uber Eats, back to the restaurant subject.
Yep.
Now all of a sudden you've got like a dozen restaurants, 18 restaurants. You choose one, you look at the menu, you go through this thing, and this thing, you pick 3 items. You're like, yeah, fuck yeah. And you're like, you know what? Fuck this. And you remove everything. You go back to the home screen, choose another restaurant. But then you're like, you know what? I think I'm going to go with the other one. But then by the end of it, you started with Vietnamese, and then you went to the Mediterranean, and then you went to like, I don't know, Chinese, and now you're just ordering fucking Wendy's.
Yeah.
But it's like all these choices in one place. And the other thing is that like when there's that many choices, that you're somewhat paralyzed by choice, but it also devalues the individual choices. Like it's the difference between like I like sneakers, so it's the difference between going to Foot Action or Foot Locker and looking at shoes on eBay.
Exactly. Yeah, that is interesting. I've never of course I've considered the idea of the more options, the more choices. That's a huge part of what technology has done for us. I had not considered the devaluing of the individual choices themselves, though.
Yeah, and as I'm sure you understand, I'm thinking this is pretty analogous to online dating, that we can go back to that. I think that it devalues the individual choices that you can make, and you can cheapen the individuals as faces on a screen.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
And that's one thing that I found frustrating, is that participating in online dating myself, I found that I may have been a bit of a minority in having the intent to actually meet someone in person. It seems that a lot of people just treat dating websites as if it's like a Facebook with prettier people. I don't know.
Well, I mean, for a lot of people, it is a social media to promote their other social medias. I've noticed that a lot on Tinder. It's like it is a lot of like, follow my Snapchat, follow my Instagram. I don't check this often. I'm never going to reply. So it's like literally someone makes a page, probably deletes the app, never checks it, and just has that as like out there. That's now free promotion. That's links to their social media sites. I do think you're right. I think a lot of dating apps have kind of gone that is what I have noticed with so recently I've tried to like get more so I've been trying the online dating thing for the past 5 years of me being single, but in a much more passive way. Like I've just almost like that way with a Tinder account. Like I've had an account, I will make sure to like get on and swipe and use my daily likes, but I'm not like really trying hard, but I've like made an effort recently to be more active with a lot of online dating. Like I created profiles on multiple different apps, and I've been trying to daily make sure that I'm like sending out messages actually and stuff like that, rather than just like, swiping right on a profile. But I've noticed then, like with the different apps that I've started, like you are right, a lot of it is not genuine people trying to meet each other. There is a lot of like people trying to sell stuff. That is very, very common.
Yeah.
Like
But like, if you're in a public place and you're talking to a person, it's clear that you have a desire to be interacting with each other, and then you can end that conversation whenever it is that you want to. Like, and so yeah, that is one thing that I think is clear. Or like, if you're at a club or a bar or something, and if you hit on somebody or try to flirt with them and they're not receptive, then you have an immediate indication.
Yeah, there's the body language that you can actually read rather than it just being text on a screen. Yeah.
Right. And then like they're clearly in a place where they have a desire to interact with some people. Maybe they don't want you to come over there and throw them some cheesy pickup line, but perhaps it's someone that does want to have a conversation with a person, have a good time talking to unfamiliar people.
Which for a while for me, that was kind of the attraction to dating apps, is like it was almost an unspoken like, okay, you're here for a reason. It's like, I know like you've got a site on this site you've got a page on this site because you're trying to meet someone. But now it's like you're saying, that's not actually
it's like, are you really though?
Yeah, there's so many people, like not even counting the fake accounts and the people trying to sell things and the people trying to get you to go to their Instagram page. There's also then just tons of people that their profile says like only here for friends. And it's like it's like literally Tinder has become like just a social media for people. Like,
get back on Facebook. The fuck is wrong with you? Like, we're like, you know what? I'm just gonna go ahead and tell you. I think maybe just on the subject, we should exchange. My favorite thing I've ever seen. Actually, I have two favorite things I've ever seen on a profile in a dating app. Okay. There's one on OkCupid. The question: you should message me if.
Oh yeah, I like that.
The response was, "Don't. It's a trap."
That's a pretty good answer. That's a good answer.
There was like a Tinder account where they had to be kidding. It had to be in jest. The only thing that their little profile blurb said was, "Validate me, daddy."
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
So that is so like beyond fucked up that there's no way you're being serious. So
I would totally send that person a message.
It's like, you're cool. Like, I hope we match so I can ask you what was the point of that? Because it was funny.
Have you ever found a profile that was like the person's so attractive that you swipe left because you're not gonna be the one that's gonna get denied by them? Has that like,
No.
you just wanted the power of like, no, I swipe left on you because I know that you're gonna swipe left on me. No matter, I know I have no chance, so I'm gonna be the one that chose here. Damn it! Like,
I've never done that. But now, I mean, I don't really have a need for a dating app now. But if I ever do in the future, however unlikely that might be, I will probably do that at some point. It's like a power play. Like, oh yeah, look at me.
well, and realistically, it's more because you only get a certain number of likes per day, so you want to
That's
spend them
true.
on people that are actually going to reciprocate it, probably. But it's so sometimes you'll see someone that's like, all right, I know that it's stupid to say this sometimes, but it's like, all right, this person is out of my league. Like, I know even if they met me, we would have one date, and they're going to be like, holy shit, I need to move on. Like,
There's times where I've been like, the whole league thing doesn't even necessarily engage with me, or I'll be like, this person might be out of my league, but I don't care.
yeah, true.
But I wanted to kind of get to like, because there's a lot of things that like people don't like really like the whole label of dating thing, and like we talked about the sex thing. And there's one thing that I actually wanted to mention that I think is funny. There is on the subject of having sex and dating, there's something called the 3-date rule.
Is that where you don't sleep with someone until the third date?
After date number 3. And this was pioneered by Charlotte York. And if you don't know who Charlotte York is, doesn't Charlotte York sound like some kind of like really like well-to-do like relationship columnist?
Yeah.
Charlotte York is a character from the show Sex and the City.
I knew that. I was going to say it sounded like a character in Sex and the City. Holy shit.
Yeah, there you go. Well, it is a character from Sex and the City. I just want to add that in there because I think it's kind of funny. So I want to talk about the whole game theory thing, though.
Yes,
like,
please.
That the whole thing with game theory that and correct me if I'm wrong. That game theory is a game is defined as an event or an activity in which the decisions of other people will affect the outcome of the game, as we'll call it, for everyone else.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's a shit definition. I think I worded that terribly, but and we could do the example like, you know, that the prisoner thing.
Yeah.
Thought experiment.
Yes.
So it's like, I've heard it said in a couple different ways, and jump on me if I'm wrong here, but it's so two criminals get caught. They're partners in this crime, and they're told, and some of them they're allowed to interact with each other, and in others they're not, and most of them they're in separate rooms.
Yes.
And what they're told
that's the important part. Yeah.
Yeah, what they're told is that if neither of you confesses, you will both get 10 years in prison. If you confess and they don't, you will be immune. You will be granted immunity, and they will get 10 years in prison. If you both confess, then you will each get 5 years in prison.
Well, so it's actually so the middle condition is supposed to be not equal to the first. So like, let's say, case like, so if A and B both betray each other, then each of them will only serve 2 years. If A betrays B but B remains silent, then A will be set free and B will serve 3 years, or vice versa. Same with B than A. And then if A and B are both silent, they will each only receive 1 year. It has to be the least. But there's supposed to be a difference between the 2 and 3 year punishment rather than them being equal.
So I totally fucked that up then. Like completely.
But it's still the same though. It's still like, yeah. So you're incentivized, like the best case scenario is both people staying silent. But because if you speak and the other person doesn't, there's a chance you actually get off free.
Yeah. And then you don't want to risk that, you know, you risk not getting off free. Like if you can try, or yes, it complicates things. It's crazy, but the outcome, each of the individuals affects the other, right?
Correct. So yeah.
That's kind of like how the whole game theory thing works. And that's where I see that I think it applies to lots of interactions, like a zero sum is like where there's like a zero sum game means that there's a clear winner and a clear loser, right?
Well,
I think
it means that, like, yeah, I guess clear winner and clear loser would be ways of defining. I think it's more about the, like, every increment of one person's gain is another person's loss.
Right.
There is like there's only a certain amount of like of quote unquote points on the table, and when one person wins, another person loses. There can't be a win-win in a zero-sum game.
So like a situation where like, okay, for instance, and I don't know if game theory necessarily applies here, at least not like in the way that it's stated, but that if you meet an individual and that individual wants to be in a relationship with the eventual goal of being a committed partners.
Okay.
So that could be a marriage, that could be just making a verbal agreement with each other.
Either way,
Long-term
their idea
thing.
is to settle down. That's
Right.
that's their goal.
And the other person just wants to hook up.
Okay.
The thing is that there is no win-win. So like either the person that wants to settle down settles down with somebody and then they get what they want, or the person that wants to hook up hooks up, or so there isn't like, so the person that just wants to hook up can lie and say whatever they have to sleep with that person, and then just like kind of turn tail whenever they want to. And that to me, like that's a situation where, you know, like both parties can't, like it's just not going to happen. One person could take advantage of and use the other person. But,
honestly, there's the other too. The person interested in a relationship could lie, act like they were interested in just hooking up, and try to manipulate the other person into a relationship.
Their mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
like
that happens too.
Yeah. But yeah, like you are right. There's the disconnect of making your intentions known and being honest about them in the beginning there. Yeah.
So at that point, they could just choose not to participate in the game, like, and it would probably be best if they just didn't.
Well, that's the win-win, because what you described is a situation where they're simply not right for each other at this point in time.
Yeah, of course, yeah, and that might change later on, but at this point, they just need to kind of part ways. But then there's another idea that I thought in the midst of thinking about this, actually on the way home.
Okay.
When you look at a relationship where it's a monogamous relationship. But one of the individuals involved wants to open things up, make it an open relationship. That there's the option where one individual is unaware of this. They get approached by the individual that wants to make it an open relationship where they can sleep with other people, and that's fine. Not necessarily calling those people significant others, but just having people they mess about with on the side. So the individual that's being approached has a few options, because they can say, no, I'm not okay with that, and risk the other person leaving the relationship. And
so in this situation, the person being approached is not okay with it. They have no interest in the relationship being open. Okay.
Right. And so they can tell the other person that they're not interested in that. Then but they
definitely have an interest in the relationship continuing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So the person that wants to open things up can accept that individual is not okay with it and just forego the idea altogether. But that person will probably end up being somewhat resentful. So then it's like, what is the best thing? So, because like, here's the thing, everybody wants to cheat. At some point, everybody has a desire to. There's a brief moment where you have the option to like make it happen or not make it happen. And I think that, so if you're the person that's not necessarily interested in this, you're being approached by the other partner in the relationship, and they want to make it an open relationship. Is it best to accept that, continue the relationship, and to take advantage of the benefits because they will be mutual, which means that you can sleep with others if you would like? Or do you just end the relationship altogether, even though you're interested in it? Like, see, I don't know if this is necessarily a game by the definition of game theory, but I think it's pretty damn close.
Yeah, it is very similar. And I think you could like, even if it doesn't fit the definition, you could probably tweak the situation to make it fit the definition. But yeah, I think like, well, it comes down to like that. I mean, again, like I feel like I say this a lot, but it's like, I don't know if it's just how my mind works or if this is how the situation actually is, but it's like, I see it as a cost benefit analysis. The person needs to weigh like, okay, I obviously care a lot about this relationship and I want this to continue. If this relationship continues in a way that it is then open and I'm not exclusive with my partner, is that, you know, how much is that worth to me? Is that worth it? Would I value that the same as the relationship that I currently have? And it's just, I mean, that's a tough decision to make, but I think that like the person needs to take inventory of every part of that relationship and determine what situation they're going to be okay with going forward. But I think you're right though, that there is a lot of hidden information that it becomes very, there's a lot of opportunity for people to be very shady in situations like that. And I think that the incentive is almost in that way. I mean, of course, like if you care about your partner and you love them, you're going to be heavily incentivized not to be dishonest. But because like what you're talking about, the risk that is inherent to do that, I think that there is a heavy incentive to almost like lie and cheat.
Yeah, it's true. I mean,
Well, it's like, I mean, like with most things, like being just honest is kind of the most difficult normally, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm. I think that's why honesty is valued so much.
Yeah.
So, and there's all kinds of stuff in here that like I'm thinking about,
listeners?
like that you were mentioning without well, I'll just go there with it. So typically when you think of, generally speaking, males versus females, like straight cisgender males versus females, that typically most of the time a lot of males would actually be quite satisfied with messing around for an extended period of time with as many people as they can, whereas like a lot of women think of it as like at a certain point in their life, maybe not all their adult life, but at a certain point in their adult life, they will feel that they have a desire to sort of settle down, so to speak, and that they will actually feel like it's cheap for someone to be able, a straight male, to be able to mess around with whoever they want to.
Is that like the biological clock we talk about?
I mean, maybe kind of like, I think to some degree, yeah, I think you could say that to some degree, that males can essentially reproduce their entire lifetime with as many people as they would like to, whereas like females have a finite amount of reproduction that they can do. But I think that there's like this, like when you were talking about like in World of Warcraft, without getting too specific, that there's the alliance and the horde, is that correct?
Yeah.
And that when you're doing the player versus player with a big battle, that the alliance players have an interest in making the game end as quickly as possible.
Yes.
And then the horde players have an interest in making it last as long as possible.
That's actually a really interesting analogy. Yeah.
So like when you look at this too, like I want to put my haha in as many hoo-hoos as I can, and do as many people as I can, and get that sexual gratification.
That's the alliance.
But you have a desire for it for us to be in this relationship or whatever. Like my uncle, actually, I was like fucking 9 years old, and my uncle was dating this lady, and I asked him, "Are you gonna marry her?" And this is I'm a 9-year-old, so my uncle looks me in the eyes and says, "Let me ask you a question. Why buy a cow when you can get milk for free?" And I was
to quote John Mulaney, that is a bananas offensive expression.
And I asked my dad about it, and my dad threw his head back like, "I cannot believe he said that to you." I was like, "What does that mean?" And it was one of those "we'll tell you one day when you're older" moments. And that's the thing, is that like a while ago, I was talking to two of my friends from work, both of them married. One of them asked me the question. He said, without sounding like a stereotypical like 30-something that's married with a kid, he's like, "I'm gonna ask you this anyway." He said, "Have you ever thought about getting married?" And I was like, "Well, you fucked up not sounding like one of those, but
yeah,
okay."
Right.
So I was like, "You know what? Hold on." And I looked over at this couple to our left. They were very close to us at this pizza place. And I saw rings on their fingers, and I asked them, "Why did you two get married?" Because I thought it could contribute.
That is a like strongly abrasive question to ask a random couple, but I like it. I'm like, but like that would come across as like you know what I mean, like random, like just out of the blue, be like, "Oh fuck, I don't know what," because I knocked her up.
The thing is that you should probably recognize that the type of person that asks that question doesn't really care.
True. Yeah.
So it's like, I didn't mean it in an abrasive fashion, but if they took it that way, that's fine. But they chose not to, which is good for that situation. And the male involved said that he used the term, he thought she deserved it. That's what he said, deserved it. that he was somehow bestowing some value like upon her by doing so, not because of him,
Maybe.
not for any ego like type reason, but that was truly something that she wanted, and he thought, this is someone who I want to give that to.
Okay.
But here's the thing, like I don't want to like jump into stereotypes. There's plenty of women that just want to mess around, and there's plenty of guys that want to settle down.
Yeah.
And that they want to have a family. That's a goal of theirs. That's something that they really want. But see, that's the problem though. Making being in a relationship or having a family a goal is bad. Because then that puts the thing itself above the person that you're doing it with.
Well, which should the goal be then? Just to meet
the goal
someone's interesting? Just like to
be to find an individual who you believe would be appropriate for that arrangement.
Mm-hmm. You just like the noble goal was like, okay, I want to find someone that is worth spending the rest of my life with, or like ideally, like I mean that's like the end goal, right? But
yeah, and for me, like the whole idea of like worth spending the rest of my life with is somewhat emotional and irrational. So it's more like someone who fits the types of, and this is the reason why I think people shouldn't get married till their 30s. Because like someone that fits the criteria for the qualities that will be most effective in a partner for me. And I think it's important to have deal breakers. You got to have deal breakers. Like there's certain things that like are just not acceptable.
Well, do you think I've heard this said recently, and like when you were going into the marriage thing, it kind of brought this to my mind. Do you agree that a lot of people in the past maybe 10, 15 years, or actually maybe more than that, a lot of the recent generations, we are more excited. We are ready to have a wedding, not a marriage. And we don't like, we want that event. We want the party of a wedding. We want that notoriety. We want the Instagram pictures. We want that shit. And we don't actually we don't want the marriage. And that's why the divorce rate is like sky high. And like so many marriages end like very quickly after starting. Like,
I don't know that that's necessarily true, because like the idea of a wedding has, at least in the last couple centuries, as far as I know, has been thought of as rather cool or interesting or prestigious.
Mm-hmm.
And like, and like in India, like it's a status symbol to have a big wedding. Like my cousin, her wedding was like 3 fucking days long, and you had to wear a different outfit for every day.
That's cool.
It was Indian weddings are so exhausting. Like, and we're Punjabi, so there was a lot of drinking. It was just,
dude, that sounds awesome. That sounds
a lot of fun. It was so much fun.
Yes, you're explaining a 3-day long party that like everyone's drinking. That sounds great.
It's not even that. It's like, no more shots, uncle, please. Like, no, like that's seriously. It's like, and then like the photo booth, and like, and her poor husband, like he's American born with Chinese parents, and they made him ride a fucking horse because it's like part of the ceremony. You put on the turban, and it's he was so scared. I was like, he's never been on a horse in his life. That's like funny. I could just tell, but I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think that maybe we have a lack of understanding of what the point is. I asked a few people at work, 2 women I work with. One of them, she has 2 children. She is divorced, and she's dated one person since she was divorced. Another one she got married. She's like one of those church kids that got married at 20 so she could fuck.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've even asked her like specifically if that's why, and she's like, yeah, pretty much. So she got married at like 20, and I believe she's 26 now.
Okay.
And I kind of asked them like what their goals were in dating, and the one who had been married and had kids, she's older, she's 35, I think.
Okay.
She was just completely uninterested in like getting married, like that it was just not anything that she's interested in doing again, and that her goal is pretty much to like have fun and enjoy people's company. The other person was trying to find somebody who they thought that they could be with, that would work well for them. But the thing that she said was she wanted to be happy. I said, well, that's just a poor goal in general.
I think we've talked about that before, where that's so vague, and what does it mean?
Yeah. And I also said, like, well, do you really like sort of hinge happiness on that? And she said, well, I mean, she's like, not really. She's like, because I'm kind of focusing more on me right now. She's like trying to make myself a better like person, like just be better and figure things out. And she's like, but before, I was like, before, would you say that you were sort of basing your value on like whether or not somebody else wanted you or like being in a relationship? And she said, yeah, I mean, kind of. And I said, well, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, like based on like now versus then, like how much more content are you? Like how much more satisfied are you with your life? And she said, can we gauge this on beers instead of 1 to 10? I was like, wait, what? And she said, well, now I don't cry every time I drink. And I was like, wow.
Good and sad. Jesus.
Like, holy shit. Like, wow. But I was like, okay, 1 to 10 is much easier. That's like numbers. She's like, so she said before, she's like, it was definitely a 1. It's like, and now it's more like an 8. And that's one thing that like I say often. Like another friend of mine at work was in a group text and she was talking about like, oh my God, I'm so tired of all these chicks trying to ask me like how to find a man. And I was like, well, here's what you should tell them. Tell them to go to the gym, find hobbies, read books, enjoy life, figure themselves out. It's like, and then what will happen is they will increase in value and interest as a person, and then they will be able to attract somebody instead of like worrying about how you go after someone or whatever. And
which is, I mean, that's true, but you also have to put yourself in positions where it can happen. You
can be deliberate about it. But for me, if you're that desperate for a person to like be your mate or whatever, you're clearly not whole.
Yeah, no. It's a good. I'm just saying, like you can do all of that, but if you're doing it in a hermetic fashion, you're never going to meet someone. So it's you're still there has to be like
out there.
Exactly.
But it's like it's priorities and like sort of do that first, because worst case scenario, you're alone, but you're fine. Like that you're actually very happy with yourself and content with your existence.
Exactly.
And it doesn't matter if anyone else is around. And you know, that's another thing like that. And yeah, dude, honestly, like I'm thinking we might need to revisit this because there's like a lot of other stuff that like I want to talk about as far as like most effective ways to do this and like what to like do and what to look out for and like
there's a lot that I haven't even gotten to. There's a lot here, man. I like this topic though. It's like it is a I like that it's different. It is not just specifically like, you know, I mean, the umbrella that we're trying to be under here is like, we're improving ourselves. We're improving, you know, our who we are as people. And a lot of times we've picked topics that are kind of directly related to that. I mean, self-esteem, you know, things that are like, okay, this is, you know, if you went into a bookstore and you looked at the like, you know, self-improvement rack, there are titles that you would see on here that it's like, oh, well, you know, there's an episode that we're going to do. Dating is not really something that falls into that directly, but there is like, because it is just a so much of like a social interaction with another person, there is so much in it that is like being a good person, becoming a better person, how to, like you were pointing out with the game discussion, like how to value other people and their, you know, their emotions and their feelings. Like there is a lot to it that is about learning about yourself and learning to be a better person, I would say. Yeah, I like it. I think it's an interesting topic. If we need to do a part 2, even if you don't want to do it like right away, if you want to revisit it at a later time, like I'm very down with that because there is much more here that I would like to get to.
I think it would be cool to do a part 2, like maybe like not next week, but maybe week after, or maybe week after that or whenever. But it's, at some point, I think we should.
Let's do like we talked about earlier. Try to do even. Well, actually, you know what? I don't know how much more research I need to do because I don't want to end up with like even more that we won't get to next time. So like, but yeah. So did you have a final thought for today?
Yeah, I don't know if you saw like, but I accidentally closed the window that had my quote in it. That's why I made a crazy face for a second. So yeah, this is actually a quote from the series Sex and the City, and it's a line by the character Carrie in the show.
Okay.
Being single used to mean that nobody wanted you. Now it means you're pretty sexy and you're taking your time deciding how you want your life to be and who you want to spend it with.
That's going to bring us to the end of another episode of the Metacast podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube and you've enjoyed the conversation, hit the like button and subscribe to keep up to date with what we're doing here. Also, please comment below and tell us a story from your dating life. If you're interested in further taking part in the discussion or even joining us as a guest on a future episode, join our Discord. The link is in the description down below. Don't forget to join us next week. We're going to be back at our normal time, live Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on twitch.tv/TylerTV. Thank you all for listening, and I hope everyone has a great week.